She wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday. Have you ever walked into a room and realized you were no longer part of the story, even though you helped build it? Her name was still on the front door, but not one soul in that penthouse moved when she stepped in. Not even the man who said, "You're my peace." What do you do when silence becomes the answer louder than anything you ever feared? If you've ever walked into silence louder than truth, share your moment in the comments. Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories. Tonight's story isn't about public scandal. It's about private betrayal, about a woman who walked away not because she was weak, but because she knew staying would be louder than leaving. If you've ever been disrespected quietly, this one's for you. It was supposed to be a 4-day retreat. Napa Valley, women in leadership, mindfulness and business growth under the same vineyard roof. Serafina packed her bags neatly, left a note on the Marble Island counter that read, "I'll be back Sunday night. Try not to burn the house down." She kissed his cheek. He barely looked up from his tablet. She didn't think much of it. Callan had been distant lately, but she chalked it up to board meetings, fourth-quarter projections, media interviews, and whatever else billionaires said when their eyes stopped searching yours. The fires started the second morning. Wildfires, just a few towns over. The retreat hosts made the call to evacuate. Flights were scrambled. Serafina didn't tell anyone she was returning early, not even her assistant. She wanted to step into her own space, have a glass of orange wine, take a bath, sleep in her own bed, not a hotel suite. She rode the elevator up to the penthouse. 42 floors of quiet. When the doors opened, the lights were already on. The air was warm, too warm. Candles flickered near the kitchen island. Music played softly from the central system. She heard laughter, deep, male, familiar, and another laugh, higher, lighter, a woman's laugh. She stood at the entrance of the living room. They hadn't noticed her. On the velvet sectional sat Callan, in his house shorts, shirt unbuttoned, head tilted back. Next to him, Lainey Creel, laughing, sipping champagne, feet tucked under her like she owned the room. Serafina's robe was on the armrest behind her. Not a replica, not a mistake. Her robe, the one with the silk piping and her embroidered initials. She hadn't packed it. She had left it. Because she lived here. She dropped her keys. The sound wasn't loud, but in a space designed by minimalist architects, every object echoed. They didn't look up, not even a glance. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A spam text. It almost made her laugh. Serafina turned around, tapped the elevator button, walked out, and never looked back. The suite was too cold, the lighting too blue. But the door closed softly behind her. No one was there. She slipped off her heels, set her phone down, and walked straight to the bathroom. She didn't cry. Instead, she filled the tub, poured in the lavender bath soak from her travel kit, and let the silence wrap her up like a second robe. Afterward, she ordered lentil soup and water with lemon. No wine. She pulled out her laptop. Her hand hovered over the keyboard. Then it moved with certainty. She opened the private files she hadn't touched in over a year. Board contracts, legal documents, founding agreements for the wellness company she created from scratch, Colvin Collective. She hadn't read them since Callan took over the finances. Not because she trusted him, because she loved him. But now, love felt like a receipt, and she wanted to check the fine print. They were in their kitchen, still in the old condo, still splitting one espresso between two mismatched mugs. "I'm not good at branding," Callan had said, "but I'm good with capital. Let me help you grow it. You want to own part of it?" She had asked. He'd smiled, held her hand across the table. "No. I want to build it with you." She believed him, so she let him in, let his firm handle the expansion, the manufacturing, the deals. She stayed the face, the product visionary, the heart, as he always called her in interviews. But behind the scenes, her decisions were being filtered, meetings held without her, numbers adjusted without clarity. She let it go, because he was her husband. because she believed that someday he'd come back to the table. She found it, buried in the contract's appendix. Clause 19b. In the event of fiduciary conflict of interest, misappropriation, or evidence of breach by the funding partner, all operational and voting rights revert to the founding party with immediate effect. He never read that far. She remembered. He skimmed and smiled. I trust you, babe. You're the writer. I'm just here to protect your dream. But that clause? That was the parachute. And now it was time to pull it. She made the call. 3 rings. A male voice answered, crisp and direct. Winters and Holt Legal. This is Evan. Serafina inhaled. This is Serafina Colvin. I'd like to activate Clause 19b. A pause. Do you have supporting documentation? I will. I need a forensic review, and I need you to be discreet. Another pause. Then, we'll begin at 7 a.m. She hung up, opened the mini fridge, took out the water, drank it slowly. This wasn't war. It was correction. She wasn't going to scream, or post screenshots, or burn it down. She was going to rewrite the ending, without ever raising her voice. The city moved on without her. By the time morning light broke past the hotel curtains, Chicago traffic was alive again. People headed to offices, kids were back in school, dogs barked from patios below the Rosehurst balcony, but none of that entered the room where Serafina sat, legs tucked under, her scrolling through the past 3 years of shared decisions. She hadn't slept. She hadn't wanted to. Not with that image still echoing behind her eyes, him on the couch, robe, tossed aside, another woman wearing pieces of her life without shame. No apology, not even the decency of being startled. Her inbox was quiet, no missed calls, no follow-up texts from Callan, not even a fake "where are you?" message to preserve his ego. He didn't care where she was. He was too confident she'd return, too sure she wouldn't burn what they built, too convinced she was still the girl who waited. That girl was gone. She dialed again. Same number as before. Avon Winters. It's Serafina. I'll send the full contracts and the last 6 quarterly reports within the hour. I want an internal review of every payment tied to Jarrell Ventures and its subsidiaries. Especially after we launched the Southeast production plant, there was no hesitation in her tone. No shakiness. No politeness to smooth it over. Yes, ma'am, he replied. She hung up and sent the documents. Then she stood, stretched, and turned on the shower. The water ran hot, and she stayed under it for 20 minutes. Not to wash anything off, to feel something warm that didn't betray her. By noon, the first round of findings came in. Small discrepancies. Margins shifted just enough to redirect funds. Invoices billed through a shell consultancy. That consultancy, owned by Lainey Creel. She smiled. Not bitterly, not victoriously, just confirmation. He didn't just hurt her. He risked her company. He used it as a playground for someone who didn't even look up when she walked in. She took the next step. Booked a suite at a discreet business residence under her maiden name, Colvin. Requested a full privacy lock on the booking. No press, no firm names, no associates notified. The name on her driver pickup, Colvin R. She moved fast. No Instagram posts, no cryptic stories, no wine-fueled rants, just movement. By late afternoon, she'd signed a retainer with the legal team. The clause would be executed once evidence finalized. She'd regain full operational control, not weeks from now. Immediately. No one saw it coming, because they didn't see her anymore. The moment he stopped looking up, he also stopped anticipating her next move. That was his mistake. And now? It would cost him everything. She left the hotel briefly to get air, walked 2 blocks to a quiet bookstore cafe she used to visit before they moved into the penthouse, before the press photos, before the Billionaire beauty title stuck to her name. Inside, the air smelled like cinnamon and printer ink. She ordered black coffee, no sweetener. While waiting, her phone buzzed. A name appeared on the screen. Marek Ruin. She hesitated. She hadn't seen that name light up her phone in 2 years. Not since the wedding. Not since she stood on a floral archway, smiling at a man she thought would never make her feel invisible. She answered, "You okay?" It was his voice. Unrushed. Steady. There was no hello. No pleasantries. "I'm alive. You sound like someone who slept in silk sheets and planned a takeover before sunrise." She didn't answer that. "I heard about the fires in Napa," he added. "Didn't expect you back." "Neither did they." A pause. Then, "Where are you?" She didn't mean to say it, but she did. "Rosehurst. But I'm leaving tonight. I've got a new spot for now. I'm nearby." She turned from the window. "Marek." "I'm not asking questions," he said. "I'm just saying I'm nearby. Do you want company?" She could have said no, but she said, "Do you drink chamomile?" "I'll bring 2 bags." She hung up, and for the first time in 24 hours, she felt her lungs loosen. Back at the hotel, she lit the small cedar candle in the corner of the room, tucked her laptop away, cleaned the table surface with a napkin and hand sanitizer. Not because she needed to, because she wanted the room to feel clean, new. At 7:46 p.m., there was a knock. 3 soft taps. Not urgent, not heavy. She opened the door. Marek stood in a navy jacket, jeans, and a paper bag in hand. He looked exactly the same, calm, unshaken, real. He stepped in without a word, set the bag on the table, pulled out 2 mugs, a thermos, and 2 tea bags. "Chamomile," he said. "With honey. I guessed right." She nodded. He poured, handed hers over, then sat across from her. No questions, no pity in his eyes. He waited, and after 3 sips, she said the words out loud. "I walked in on him." Marek didn't flinch. "With her?" he asked. She nodded. He nodded back, took a sip. "That tracks." She looked up. He met her eyes. "I didn't like the way he treated you. Even when you were happy." She smiled. "Were we ever really happy? You used to smile. But your eyes stopped matching." They sat in silence. Not the kind that begged for answers. The kind that allowed space. "I found the clause," she whispered. He never read it. "I'm taking everything back." "You're not taking it back," he corrected gently. "You're continuing what you started. He just forgot it wasn't his." She stared at the tea bag string, twirled it once, then stopped. "I didn't expect it to feel this quiet. You thought it would feel like a war." She nodded. "But it doesn't," he said, "because wars need opponents. He's not your equal anymore." She didn't cry, but her shoulders dropped. And for the first time, she didn't feel like she was floating. Marek didn't try to define what was happening. He didn't ask if she was staying or leaving for good, didn't ask what the next steps were, didn't ask if she was okay. He just poured more tea and sat with her in the middle of the storm. By the time the clock blinked 11:17 p.m., the candle had nearly burned out. She yawned. "You want me to go?" She looked at the bed, then at him. "You want to stay?" He smiled softly. "Just the chair. You won't even know I'm here." She nodded, brushed her teeth, tied her scarf, slipped under the blanket. He turned off the lights, and in the dark, she heard him adjust the chair, settle into it, and exhale. Not like a man who came to rescue anyone, but like a man who knew stillness was sometimes the loudest kind of support. And she slept, not because it was safe, not because it was solved, but because for once she wasn't alone in her own silence. If you've ever been overlooked, if your presence was treated like background noise in a room you helped build, or if you've had to rebuild quietly after someone thought you'd never leave, tell us your story in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear it. And if Serafina's strength reminded you of your own, like this video, share it. And subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more stories where quiet strength speaks louder than betrayal. You don't always need to shout. Sometimes, walking away is the loudest thing you'll ever do. The next morning, Serafina dressed in black trousers and a buttoned olive blouse. Nothing loud, but structured, sharp, intentional. She sat in front of the large mirror in the business suite and applied concealer under her eyes. Nothing extra. Just enough to hide the fact she hadn't truly slept in 2 nights. There was no need for a face built for comfort. Today wasn't about recovery. It was about reclaiming. Her inbox was already full. 3 flagged emails from Avon. Preliminary report, 23 flagged transactions under Betrayal Ventures. 7 of those led back to Laney. Another 9 were split across shell entities, most linked to consultancy, services rendered during the wellness brand's Pacific expansion. She didn't react. Instead, she poured herself a glass of cold water and sat at the desk. There was a legal meeting at 11:30, a digital transfer of founder rights scheduled for 2 p.m. No press statements, no dramatic exits. She wasn't tearing things down. She was simply taking them back. At 10:06 a.m., her phone lit up. Callan Durrell. The first time in 3 days. She watched it ring. 5 seconds. 10. She didn't touch it. It stopped. Rang again 30 seconds later. This time she answered. She didn't speak first. "Where are you?" he asked. Not angry, not frantic. Flat. A man trying to gauge how far his shadow still reached. "You didn't ask that when I walked in." A pause. "I didn't see you." That's the part I remember most. He was quiet. "I just want to talk, Sia," he added. "Can we talk?" She leaned back in her chair, looking at the skyline outside the tall glass windows. "There's nothing left to talk about, Callan." He exhaled hard. "So what, you disappear? Is this how you handle problems? You didn't seem to think I was a problem." She tilted her head. "You treated me like furniture. I'm just returning the favor." He laughed once. Hollow. "That's dramatic. You always go for the performance when you're hurt." She blinked slowly. "I'm not hurt. I'm clear." Before he could respond, she ended the call. Not abruptly, not angrily, just done. The next time he'd see her face would be on the revised board documents, no longer his partner. She opened the second email from Avon. The clause had been triggered. The documents were reviewed, evidence catalogued. Control was ready to be reassigned. Her heart didn't race. She didn't second-guess herself. She clicked approve. 30 seconds later, she received confirmation. Effective immediately, Serafina Colvin holds 100% operational and executive control over Colvin Collective. Her hands didn't tremble. Instead, she closed her laptop, stood, and walked to the window. Below, people crossed streets. Taxis honked at slow walkers. Somebody jogged with a coffee in hand. Life went on. And for the first time in years, hers was hers again. She changed into a blazer, pulled her curls into a low bun, and took the back exit of the hotel to avoid being seen. At Marek's studio, she rang the bell once. He opened the door, wearing dark denim and a paint-splattered shirt. "Studio day?" she asked. "Renovation sketches." "I'm bidding on the Weller District rebuild." She stepped in. The room smelled like cedar, fresh coffee, and pencil lead. He poured her a cup before she could ask. "I made something," he said, pulling a sheet from his table. She leaned in. A building design. Soft lines, earth tones, open glass walls surrounded by indoor plants and tall shelves. "It's a community wellness center," he said. "Thought it might fit your vision." She stared at it for a long moment. "It looks like it breathes." He smiled. "That was the point." She sat, slowly. "Marek, I just took the company back. You good?" "I'm calm." He nodded. "Then you're good." No applause. "No, I told you so." Just mutual understanding. She reached for her cup. "I keep waiting for the part where I fall apart. Maybe that part already happened." Quietly. "So you could stay standing now." She looked up at him. "You always do that." "What?" "Say the right thing. But never make it about yourself." "I had a long season where no one knew how to sit with me either," he replied. "I'm just returning what I learned." She stared at the sketch again. "Then, I want to build this." He nodded once. "Then we will." No contract needed. No dramatic declarations. Just decision. And that was more binding than any signature. Back at her new residence, she received a package at the front desk. No label, no name, just a thin cream envelope. Inside, a card. "Let's fix this. Dinner at the Westin, 8 p.m. I'll be there." Signed, Callan. She stared at it, folded it in half, dropped it in the waste bin. He hadn't looked up when she walked in. She had no intention of looking back now. Instead, she powered on her laptop and typed a single line in a group message to her new leadership team. Ownership restored. "Let's move." Replies rolled in. Thumbs up. Heart emojis. "Yes, sir." One reply stood out. From Kenley, her operations lead. "We've been waiting for you." "Welcome home." She smiled. Not the kind meant for cameras. The kind that came from the stomach. Quiet. Slow. She didn't need a stage. She already had her place back, and this time, no one would take it by pretending to help her grow. She'd grown through the silence, and now her silence had bloomed into action. She brewed tea again. No chamomile tonight. She chose green jasmine, and watched as the sun dipped into the skyline, golden and tired, just like she'd felt for so long. Only this time, she wasn't tired from being dismissed. She was tired from walking back to herself. And it was the best kind of tired there was. Lainey Creel liked the camera, liked the reflection of herself in high-end shop windows, liked being noticed, especially when she was next to a man whose bank account was more famous than his last name. She didn't always start out that way. 3 years ago, she was a junior consultant with a moderate following and a sharp instinct for where power was about to shift. Callan had noticed her at a tech panel, one of those events with fake networking and overpriced sparkling water. Serafina had been at the same event, just 2 rows away, presenting the first version of her wellness expansion pitch. Lainey watched her, took mental notes. But when Callan leaned in afterward, he didn't ask Serafina how she did it. He asked Lainey if she wanted to meet for drinks. 2 years later, that choice would echo across every corner of his life. Because while Serafina was busy building something that made people feel seen, Lainey was studying how to be seen instead of. Now, sitting in Callan's penthouse, she sipped from his glass, slid her phone across the coffee table, and scrolled through the latest articles. Serafina was on the cover of Elle Business. Lainey's stomach tightened. She didn't let it show. She simply tilted the screen toward Callan. "Look who's glowing." He looked up, barely interested. But then, his face tensed. Black silk dress, curled hair, quiet posture. Serafina looked nothing like someone recovering from betrayal. She looked like the center. "Did you know she was working on this?" Lainey asked casually. Callan didn't answer. She sipped again. "You think she's bluffing?" He stood, walked to the window. "She hasn't said a word to me. Maybe she doesn't have to." He turned. "What do you mean?" Lainey leaned back. "You ever wonder if the worst part of betrayal isn't what you did, but the fact that she didn't try to stop you?" He said nothing. She slid the tablet away. "She's not coming back, Callan. You didn't cheat on a wife. You dismissed a weapon." He stared at her. For the first time, he didn't see the robe she wore. He saw the power it no longer belonged to. Meanwhile, Serafina stood in front of a different mirror. No robe, no silk dress, just a ribbed top and slacks. She was getting ready for something else, an internal brand review, not PR, not sales. She was meeting the women she hired, the ones who'd joined her quietly, without expectation of applause. It was their first full staff video call since she'd regained full control. She sat, logged in. Dozens of faces appeared, some with head wraps, some with babies in laps, some sitting at shared desks in borrowed offices. She didn't use slides. She didn't read from a document. She simply said, "Thank you for holding this while I found my way back." And they clapped. Not because they were told to, because someone had finally chosen to lead with clarity. She told them about the next phase, new storefronts, community centers. a reinvestment in hiring from shelters and re-entry programs. Kenley asked the only question that shifted the air. Will you be the face again? Serafina hesitated. Then, no. This time, I want to build systems that don't need one. A pause, then, nods. Because they got it. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about making sure no woman had to start from scratch with no name, no help, and no warning. Later that night, Merrick made pasta. He cooked like he designed. Quiet hands, clean rhythm, calm precision. She watched from the bar stool. I heard from the summit board, she said. He didn't look up. The leadership event? They want me to speak. He added a pinch of salt. You say yes? I haven't decided. He turned. Why not? She sipped water. Because I don't want to be a symbol. You already are. She blinked. Not because of what happened, he added. Because of how you moved after. She was silent. He set the pot down and walked over, rested his hands on the counter. You don't have to explain your story. But if telling it helps someone else leave a room with their dignity still intact, isn't that worth standing up for? She nodded slowly. Maybe. Besides, he added, you don't have to be loud. He smiled. You just have to be present. She didn't reply. But when he set the plate in front of her, she reached for his hand. Not to pull him closer. Just to hold it while she ate. No declarations, no rush. Just two people. And silence that wasn't heavy anymore. Across the city, Callan was reviewing damage control plans. His PR advisor had drafted a statement about temporary operational adjustments at Colvin Collective. He crossed it out. He knew she wouldn't respond. She wouldn't attack, wouldn't expose him, which made it worse, because she was winning by simply walking forward. No headlines, no dragging, just being undeniable. He opened his text thread, typed, deleted, typed again. I know you've moved on. I still want to talk. He didn't send it. Instead, he stared at the last photo they ever took together. A gala event. She was in emerald green. He was looking at the camera. She wasn't. She was looking at him. That was the difference. He looked to be seen. She looked to see. And now that she'd stopped looking his way, he realized just how much of her gaze had built him. Serafina's phone vibrated at midnight. A photo, no message, just a shot of her robe, neatly folded, sitting alone on the back of a chair. She stared at it for a moment, then deleted it, because she wasn't going back for anything that had already been taken without care. She closed her eyes, rolled to the other side of the bed, and let the night hold her. The gala wasn't meant to be a confrontation. Serafina never planned for him to be there. She hadn't even wanted to go. But Colvin Collective had been nominated for an innovation spotlight at the annual Venture Forward Gala. It wasn't a PR stunt. Her team submitted the application quietly without consulting her. They believed in what she was building. She showed up for them. She wore black silk. Simple, long sleeves, no slit, nothing flashy, but everything intentional. Her heels didn't click when she walked. They whispered, like she was gliding through a world that used to require permission, until she remembered her presence had always been the access pass. She stepped onto the carpet, past photographers who didn't call her name. They didn't need to. By morning, every photo they snapped would be reposted with headlines they hadn't written yet, because some arrivals don't make noise until the silence they enter rearranges the room. Inside the ballroom, tables were dressed in navy and gold. Centerpieces flickered with soft candles. The scent of money and influence hung in the air, polished, perfumed, over-curated. She took her seat at table 17. Marek wasn't far. He didn't wear a tie, didn't comb his hair with product, didn't try to match the glitter. But when he nodded across the room, she felt grounded, as if all the noise, cameras, heels, laughter, couldn't reach her side of the table. The lights dimmed. The announcer stepped on stage. Names were called. Applause. More applause. Then, please welcome the founder and CEO of Colvin Roots, the recipient of this year's Community Innovation Honor, Serafina Colvin. Not Collective. Roots. They'd used the new name, the name that was hers alone. She stood, walked, slowly. Lainey was seated 2 tables away. Callan beside her. He didn't clap, didn't smile. He simply stared. Lainey watched her too, more curious than bitter. Serafina stepped onto the stage, took the mic. No notes. She looked around the room like she'd been here before, but never like this. 3 years ago, she began, I was told that success would come faster if I partnered with someone who could open doors for me. A pause. It did come faster, but I learned, too late, that some doors aren't opened, they're just rented, and when the lease ends, you're the one locked out of the building you built. A few chuckles, mostly silence. I lost a lot rebuilding. Comfort, time, people I thought would always be in my corner. She took a breath. But what I found was mine. And more importantly, it helped others find what was theirs too. She looked down at the award in her hand. This isn't about me. It's about the women whose names don't end up in rooms like this. So I'm accepting this for them. For every woman who walked away from what no longer honored her. She stepped down. Applause followed. Callan didn't move. Lainey leaned back in her seat, unreadable. At her table, Marek stood when she returned. No words, just respect. She sat down, stared at her untouched glass of champagne, didn't reach for it. Her hands were steady, because power didn't always come with noise. Sometimes it looked like calm in a room full of people who once ignored your name. After the event, people swarmed. Reporters, executives, women in suits. They called her visionary, resilient, powerful. She answered them with a smile that didn't ask for more. Marek waited by the exit, his hands in his pockets. You ready? He asked. She nodded. They stepped out into the cold night. A wind picked up, but it didn't bite. Instead, it felt like a page turning, like the air itself was done repeating the same chapter. Do you want to grab a late dinner? He asked. She looked at him. No, she said gently. I want to go home. Your place or mine? Whichever one lets me sleep without performing. He smiled. Then mine. They drove in silence, not tense, not awkward, just peaceful, like people who didn't need to impress each other to belong in the same space. Inside his apartment, he handed her a change of clothes, soft sweats, a long tee. She didn't ask how he had a drawer with her size. She changed, washed her face. He made warm oat milk with honey. They sat on his couch, the TV playing low. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I didn't plan to speak tonight. You didn't need to, he said, but you did. For the ones who needed to hear it, I thought it would hurt. It didn't. No, she said. It healed something. He looked down at her hand resting on his leg. He placed his over it. She didn't move, and in that quiet, Callan scrolled through his feed back at the penthouse. Post after post, photos of her on stage, captions calling her a comeback story, a model of grace, an icon of strength. He tossed the phone aside. Lainey was in the bedroom. She hadn't said a word on the ride back. She was already slipping out of his shadow, not because she'd found someone else, but because power was shifting, and she could smell it. And Callan, for the first time in years, had no idea what to do with silence. He couldn't own it, couldn't seduce it, couldn't buy his way out of it, because she never raised her voice. But the entire room had listened, and none of them were listening to him. The next morning, Serafina didn't wake up to panic. No jolt, no tight chest, no pit in her stomach. She woke to the smell of cinnamon and Marek humming softly in the kitchen. It was a melody she didn't recognize, probably something he made up, but it felt like peace, and she wasn't used to mornings that didn't ask anything of her. She wrapped the blanket tighter and stepped out onto the balcony. Cold air kissed her skin, but it didn't bite. Below, the city moved, but not as fast as it used to feel. He walked out, 2 mugs in hand. You like cinnamon, right? He asked. I like waking up to it, she replied. He handed her a cup and leaned against the rail. For a while, they said nothing. Then she looked at him. You didn't ask how the rest of the night went. I saw your face when you got in the car, he said. That told me everything. She sipped the tea. He was there, she said. 2 tables away. Marek didn't flinch. Did he speak to you? No. You wanted him to? She shook her head. I wanted him to see what I looked like when I stopped waiting. He nodded. And did he? I think for the first time, he actually looked up. Elsewhere, Callan sat alone in his home office. He hadn't turned on the lights. The window blinds were still shut, casting faint lines across the polished floor. He stared at the framed photo on his desk, one of the last charity galas they attended as a couple. Serafina had worn red that night. Her hand had been in his, but her smile hadn't reached her eyes. He hadn't noticed then. Now, it was all he could see. The robe was gone. He didn't know where it ended up. She hadn't asked for it back. He checked his email again. Nothing from her. Not a single line. And that silence said more than any message could. Lainey came in around noon, wearing a soft cashmere sweater, her hair pulled into a loose bun. "You're still here?" she asked, surprised. He didn't respond. She crossed her arms. "You're not going to reach out?" "I tried." She raised an eyebrow. "You call that trying?" She didn't answer. "She's not going to." He looked at her, and for the first time, he realized something. Lainey wasn't worried about Serafina coming back. She was worried about what Serafina had already taken with her when she left. His name, his narrative, and every ounce of credibility he used to own in spaces that now called Serafina the example. "She rebuilt without you," Lainey added. "And you're still trying to figure out how." He didn't answer, because there was nothing left to say. Serafina spent the afternoon at the new Colvin Roots office. It was open concept. Warm woods, light streaming through skylights, a community pantry in the back, childcare space on the 3rd floor. Nothing about it resembled the sterile, glass-covered floors of Durell Holdings. And that was the point. She walked through quietly, spoke to every team member by name, asked about their families, their side projects, the little things they cared about outside the job. It wasn't performance, it was presence. At the end of the walkthrough, her executive assistant caught up to her. "There's a media request. Big platform." Serafina stopped. "Do they want a soundbite or a story?" "Headline," the assistant replied. "They want you to comment on being the wife who won." Serafina exhaled. "No." "Want me to send a quote instead?" "No." She looked out the office window. "Silence worked better than any quote I could have given." The assistant nodded and walked off. She wasn't building a revenge empire. She was building freedom, for herself and for others. She sat in her office, pulled out her notebook, and began mapping out a scholarship program. Not under her name. Just for the woman who left quietly. Later that evening, Marek picked her up for dinner. Nothing fancy. Just a local Korean barbecue spot he loved. They sat across from each other in a quiet corner booth, sharing grilled short ribs and kimchi pancakes. She watched him work the grill with ease. "You're comfortable with your hands," she said. He looked up. "I mean..." She smiled. "You build things. Sketch. Cook. My hands have always been steadier than my words," he said. "They make people feel safe," she added. He paused. "You included?" She met his gaze. "Yes." He leaned back slightly. "That matters to me." She stared at him for a beat longer than usual, then went back to eating. He didn't press. He never did. After dinner, they walked back to his car slowly, letting the evening wind slide past them. At the stoplight, he glanced down at her hand. Didn't reach for it, but she reached for his, fingers interlocked, lightly, no rush, no expectation, just contact. "Are you afraid of what this could be?" he asked quietly. "I'm afraid of rushing into something just to feel whole again," she admitted. He nodded. "Then we don't rush." They walked in silence again. The street lamp flickered above them. Somewhere in the distance, a musician played jazz on a corner. And in that moment, Serafina realized she wasn't trying to replace what she lost. She was just trying to protect what she was becoming, and that, she thought, was the first kind of love she'd ever chosen on her own terms. Serafina stood at the center of the new Colvin Roots retreat property, a wide, open lot on the outskirts of the city with wild grass, steady hills, and distant trees that looked like guardians more than background. The air smelled clean, no steel, no elevators, just sky and potential. Marek stood beside her, rolling up a blueprint on a makeshift table. He had drawn every line of the new wellness center himself. No big design firm, no sponsor logos, just space designed with peace in mind. Each room will have floor-to-ceiling windows, he said. Natural light does more for healing than half the self-help industry. She smiled, watching him point to notes. His hands never moved with hesitation. Even when he wasn't sure what came next, he carried the air of a man who trusted himself anyway. And something about that steadiness calmed her in a way she hadn't known she needed. He looked at her. This is the first place we're building that won't need a grand reveal. She tilted her head. Why? Because the people who walk through it won't need to prove they've arrived. They'll already know they belong. Her throat tightened, not with sadness but gratitude, the kind that makes your chest ache before it melts. I never thanked you, she said quietly. For what? For driving to Rosehurst that night, for not asking what happened, for not trying to fix it, just showing up. He turned to her, gaze soft but clear. I didn't come to fix anything. I came because I remembered who you were before you became someone else's idea of power. That hit deeper than she expected. She blinked once, then again. Let's walk, she said. They moved slowly across the lot, no talking for a while. She used to hate silence between people, felt it meant something was wrong. Now, she realized, some silences healed, some silences held space. At the far end of the property, a stack of bricks sat under a tarp. Materials already delivered, construction scheduled. She stepped onto the slab that would be her office. No walls yet, just outlines. Marek stopped just behind her, not crowding, just present. She turned to him. If this had been my first foundation, I wonder who I would have become. You're becoming her now, he said. She looked down. I gave him everything, my best ideas, my softest trust, my time, and he didn't even look up. Marek's voice didn't rise, because he knew if he did, he'd see someone who deserved more than he was ever willing to give. She closed her eyes briefly. The wind picked up. A single leaf danced across the concrete. She stepped off the slab. I don't want my past to shape how I lead this next part. Then don't lead from pain, he said. Lead from presence. She nodded. And just like that, she made a decision. No interviews, no viral breakdown posts, no tearful sit-down exposes. She'd tell her story only in spaces where healing was possible, not where curiosity was hungry. Back in the city, Callan stood in a boardroom filled with men who used to echo him. Now, their words were cautious. Sales were down. Partnerships were slipping. And 3 major vendors had moved their wellness lines to Colvin Roots without warning. He paced. She's not even trying to compete, he snapped. Hiskuo spoke quietly. That's exactly why people are drawn to her. Callan didn't respond. He looked out the window at the skyline. How had it all shifted so fast? He thought silence meant surrender, but Serafina's silence had become a signal. And now, the world wasn't following noise anymore. It was following what felt real. He pulled out his phone, opened her contact again. Nothing had changed. He stared at it for a while, then typed, "You made your point. Can we talk without the layers?" He hovered over send, then erased it. What would he even say? He used to call her his compass, but now she was the map, and he was lost without a starting point. Back at her apartment, Serafina poured tea into a tall glass, then checked her calendar. The summit team had followed up again. They still wanted her as a closing keynote speaker. No mention of her ex. No spin, just her story, her presence. She still hadn't answered. Her phone buzzed. Marek, You up for dinner at the site again? He asked. Same stew? Different seasoning. You'll like this one better. She smiled. I'm bringing notebooks, she replied. I want to dream out loud. Good, he said. I'll bring extra pens. Before they hung up, he said one more thing. Thanks for letting me build beside you. She paused, then said, thanks for not making me rebuild alone. And when she looked in the mirror that night, she didn't see the woman who got walked out on. She saw the woman who kept walking and started building again, brick by brick. Serafina stood on the second floor of the new retreat site as dusk settled over the land. The framework was still open, the beams stretching skyward like quiet promises. She wore a long cardigan over her sweats and held a thermos Marek had filled with warm ginger tea. Below her, contractors wrapped up for the day. She could hear soft conversation and the sound of tools being packed away. But none of it felt rushed. It was her favorite time of day now, the slowing, when things got quieter, not because they were finished, but because they were settling into rhythm. Marek came up the stairs with 2 folding chairs slung over his arm. You don't like sitting on anything that was already here, do you? She teased. Fresh structure. Fresh seat, he said. He set the chairs on the open deck and handed her a blanket. They sat together, watching the sun melt into the hills. You ever think about what would have happened if we had met at a different time? She asked suddenly. He didn't look surprised. I think we met at the time that taught us how not to lose ourselves next time. She turned toward him. And this is next time. He didn't answer with words. He reached over and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, not with hunger, not with hesitation, with care. I don't want to rush you, he said. I'm not rushing, she whispered. I'm just moving differently now. He nodded, and they let that truth sit between them without needing more. Back in the city, Callan sat in a silent room full of noise. The board wanted explanations. His advisors wanted statements. His new CFO wanted numbers that made sense. He stared at the quarterly report in front of him. Colvin Roots was expanding faster than projections accounted for. But what no report could explain was how an entire brand was built on stillness and somehow became louder than anything he could have manufactured. He closed the folder. I need to see her, he said. His assistant blinked. Sir, Serafina, I need to speak with her, face to face. She hasn't responded to any messages. Then find someone who she'll listen to. His assistant hesitated, then quietly asked, what exactly are you hoping to say? Callan didn't answer, because even he wasn't sure. All he knew was that he couldn't sleep anymore without wondering if the last words she said to him would be the ones that echoed forever. Later that night, Serafina pulled out a box of old notebooks she hadn't touched in years. Inside were sketches, mind maps, lists of things she used to want before everything got tangled in mergers and joint statements. She sat on the floor, flipping through pages. One section was titled, If I Ever Build From Scratch. She read the bullet points aloud. Hire mothers returning to work, wellness days that aren't just slogans, a space with soft chairs, real light, and no corporate buzzwords. She smiled softly. She had almost forgotten who she used to be. Not bitter, not guarded, not guardedly strategic. Just someone who wanted to build things that felt like exhaling. She snapped a photo of the page, sent it to Marek. Still feels like me, even now. He replied within a minute. That's how you know you're on the right path. The real you never left. She was just waiting for you to circle back. She set the phone down and let the words sink in. The next day, she arrived at the downtown location of Colvin Roots. Media was outside, even though no official statement had been made. Her assistant met her at the car. There's a man inside claiming he has a personal meeting with you. Serafina frowned. What man? The assistant hesitated. Says his name is Royce Langston. Says he's Callan's advisor. Serafina's expression didn't shift. Let him wait, she said. She entered the building, took the elevator to the second floor, checked in with her product team, made notes in her sketch pad, sat with her logistics lead to review their upcoming local hire fair. An hour passed. Then 2. Only then did she send a message to her assistant. "Tell Mr. Langston I'm available now. 5 minutes only. No refreshments." When she entered the conference room, Royce stood. Polished, slim tie, neutral smile. "Serafina, thank you for your time." She nodded once. 5 minutes. He didn't waste any. "Callan would like the opportunity to speak with you privately." She didn't react. "I believe it's more than an apology," he continued. She cut him off. "Let me ask you something, Mr. Langston." He paused. "Of course, if I had done to him what he did to me, would you be in front of him, asking him to take my call?" He swallowed. "Exactly," she said. She rose. "This isn't personal anymore. This is clarity. Let him keep his narrative. I'm living something real." She walked out. No drama, no raised voice. Royce didn't follow. That night, Marek opened the front door to find her standing there. No makeup, no big announcement. She stepped inside and didn't say much. He handed her a bowl of warm soup. She sat on his couch. They ate in silence. Midway through, she looked over. "I told his advisor I didn't want to talk." Marek didn't nod or speak. He just kept listening. "And I didn't feel guilt," she said. Still, he stayed quiet. She leaned back. "I don't want to feel powerful. I just want to feel free." Marek turned to her finally. "And do you?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm not asking anyone to make room for me." He set the bowl down, then quietly said, "There's already room, and I'm not going anywhere." She looked at him, then leaned forward, touched her forehead to his. A moment of pause. And this time, when she kissed him, it wasn't to fill a silence. It was to seal one, to make peace with everything she had outgrown. The Summit Auditorium was built like a cathedral, high ceilings, quiet lighting, and rows of seats that made every whisper feel like it carried weight. When Serafina stepped into the venue, her heels didn't echo. They just landed with calm intent. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't sure if that made her brave or just tired of fearing her own voice. The organizers greeted her with bright smiles and clipboards. "Anything you need, just say the word." She nodded. "Water and a place to sit until I go on." They led her to a green room off stage, stocked with too much tea and not enough silence. She chose a corner, pulled out her notepad, the same one she used when she wrote down ideas at 3 a.m. while Callan slept. Beside her, unaware that she was planning an entire empire under his shadow. She glanced at the top page. It was blank, not because she had nothing to say, but because this time, she wasn't writing a speech. She was going to speak from the part of her that no longer apologized for surviving. Back in the crowd, Marek sat in the 5th row, not front, not back, just enough to be there. He wore a soft button-down and dark jeans. No badge, no fanfare. Someone beside him whispered, "That's her, the one from the wellness company." Another said, "Didn't her husband cheat?" He didn't flinch, didn't turn around, because none of those sentences mattered now. What mattered was that she walked back into herself without asking permission. And now, she was about to share that walk with 1,000 strangers, who might have needed a reminder that walking away was never weakness. It was survival with direction. Backstage, the event manager peeked in. "You're on in 5. Serafina stood, smoothed the front of her blazer, took a deep breath. She didn't wear a mic. She requested a handheld, not because it looked better, because she wanted to hold something steady while her voice reminded the room that strength didn't always shout. She stepped into the wings. The host walked up to the podium. "Our final speaker is someone who didn't ask to become a symbol, but became a movement, not because she posted louder, but because she walked with purpose when the world expected her to break." Applause followed the introduction. She walked to the center. No slides, no logo, no sound but footsteps and breath. She looked out across the room. People of all ages, all styles, some already leaning in. She held the mic, paused, then spoke. "I wasn't supposed to speak today. Not because I couldn't, but because for a long time, I convinced myself I didn't need to. She walked a few steps. Silence can be a hiding place, but it can also be a home. And sometimes it becomes the only thing you trust when everything else collapses. The room held its breath. I gave the best parts of myself to someone who called me his peace, until my silence became his permission to disappear. When I walked in and saw him choose someone else, he didn't even look up. Murmurs. She didn't feed them. I didn't burn anything. I didn't yell. I didn't throw glass. A beat. I booked a room, drank soup, opened a contract he forgot I wrote, and took back what I built. A soft clap. Then a few more. She didn't pause. I'm not here because I left. I'm here because I stayed gone. Because leaving is a decision, but staying gone is a discipline. Now the applause built, and she let it rise, then gently held up her hand. It quieted again. I didn't tell the world what he did. I told the world what I would no longer accept. And I built again, without noise, without his name, without needing to be angry. She looked down for a moment, then back up. I love quietly. I leave quietly. And when I rebuild, I don't ask anyone to clap, because I've learned that peace doesn't need an audience. Silence, thick, respectful, then applause. This time, standing. She stepped back, let it wash over her, but didn't let it enter her bones. Because she wasn't doing this for applause. She was doing it for every woman who had to start over in the dark, with nothing but self-trust and a coffee budget. Backstage, she exhaled. Marek met her there. He didn't say anything, just opened a bottle of water and handed it to her. She took it, drank, then leaned her head briefly against his shoulder. I didn't black out, she said. He smiled. No. You lit something. She looked up at him. It didn't feel like a performance, because it wasn't, he said. It was presence. Her eyes softened. He took her hand, not for show, not for timing, just to hold it while the world adjusted to the sound of her real voice. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she needed to follow up with anything. She had already said enough. The summit closed with champagne flutes, soft jazz, and half-hearted networking chatter in a nearby rooftop lounge. Serafina didn't attend. She didn't want to be congratulated by people who wouldn't have looked her in the eye a year ago. Instead, she and Marek drove to a quiet diner 3 neighborhoods away from the venue. Vinyl booths, warm pie, and the kind of menu that hadn't changed in 20 years. The waitress recognized her. You're the woman from the summit. Serafina paused. I saw your talk, the woman continued. You didn't blink once. Serafina smiled softly. I blinked a few times. The woman grinned. Well, I didn't notice. You looked like truth. They ordered tea and dessert. No celebration speech, no champagne toast. Just a warm corner booth and a shared plate of peach cobbler. Marek cut a piece, slid it across to her. She took a bite and closed her eyes. I haven't tasted something this comforting in months, she said. Because comfort doesn't come with cameras. He didn't say it with bitterness, just honesty. She looked out the window. The street was mostly empty, a city slowing down. She leaned back. The thing I keep thinking about is how long I stayed, how I ignored every moment I knew something was off. He folded his arms. That's not weakness, I know, but it's wild how silence starts as protection and becomes a trap. He nodded. You gave him the benefit of doubt until there was no doubt left. She rested her elbow on the table, her fingers tracing the edge of the glass. I used to think staying made me loyal. He met her eyes. Staying past your own voice doesn't make you loyal. It makes you lost. She didn't speak, just breathed. Then, I'm not lost anymore. They paid the bill and stepped outside. The night was colder now. She wrapped her coat tighter, but didn't rush to the car. Marek waited. She glanced up at him. Do you ever think about what it would have looked like if we'd met again sooner? He studied her face. Not to read her, to feel her. I don't need sooner, he said. I just need this. She stepped closer. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just near enough that his warmth became part of hers. "Take me home," she said softly. He nodded. At his place, she moved slower, took off her coat, hung it, removed her shoes one at a time. She didn't need to fill space with conversation, didn't need to explain what she was thinking. He handed her a hoodie. She changed in the bathroom. When she returned, he was on the couch, lights dim, a soft playlist playing in the background. No assumptions, no performance, just space. She walked over. He opened his arms. She sat beside him, let her head rest against his chest. For a long time, that was all they did. Breathe in sync. Then she tilted her face up. His hand moved gently to her cheek. No pressure, just warmth. He kissed her. Slow, intentional. No rush to turn it into something louder. It wasn't about conquering grief or erasing the past. It was about the first moment she allowed herself to feel closeness, without fear attached. He kissed her again, and she let herself melt into it, not to escape anything, but to finally arrive. In the morning, the air smelled like coffee and cardamom. She woke in one of his shirts, curled under a quilt she didn't recognize but liked immediately. He was at the stove, stirring something, humming again. "You always hum," she said, voice still half asleep. He looked over his shoulder. "You always wake up quiet." She got up and walked toward him. He poured coffee into her mug, no asking. He knew how she liked it. 2 creams, nothing else. She sipped and watched him. "I've never had a morning like this," she said. "No calls," he teased. "No second thoughts," she corrected. He turned, walked to her, placed both hands gently on her hips. "You're allowed to have good mornings, Seer." She stared at him. Even after nights that felt like loss, even after years that made you question yourself, she leaned into his chest. "You're not anyone's broken chapter." She closed her eyes. "You're the next page." Back in the city, Callan sat in his office, staring at his calendar. It was full, but none of it felt meaningful. Partnership reviews, investor brunches, new product development meetings. He clicked out of it and opened social media. Scrolled. The summit hashtag had gone viral. Not because of the sponsors, not because of the keynote, because of her. Clips from her speech had been shared thousands of times. "I'm not here because I left. I'm here because I stayed gone." Silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's strategy. His inbox was flooded with notifications from reporters asking for a comment. He didn't respond. What could he say? He thought her silence would make her forgettable. Instead, it made her unforgettable, and no matter how loud he tried to be now, no one was listening. At Colvin Root's headquarters, Serafina walked through the front doors to a quiet welcome. No cameras, no bouquets, just her team standing tall, holding coffee mugs and open laptops. Kenley walked up. "That summit speech is rippling through every inbox I've got." Serafina smiled. "We didn't do it for that." "True," Kenley said. "But Impact never asked for permission." Serafina walked to her office. The space smelled like citrus and fresh linen. She sat down, opened her notebook, wrote one sentence at the top of the page: "Build from truth, not reaction." And for the first time since she walked out of that penthouse, she wasn't walking away from something. She was walking towards something. If you've ever rebuilt yourself after being overlooked, if you've ever chosen peace over performance, or if you've walked away quietly only to find your strength on the other side, tell us in the comments. Your story might be the reminder someone else needs right now. And if Serafina's journey spoke to a part of you that's still healing, like this video, share it. Subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories. Because sometimes the softest voice is the one that changes everything. Callan watched the clock on his wall strike 10 a.m. sharp. It was the same custom clock he'd ordered from Switzerland 2 years ago. Handcrafted, gilded edge, silent movement. But this morning, the silence felt heavier. He wasn't late for anything. That was the problem. His schedule had gaps now, long spaces where her presence used to be, approvals she used to handle. projects she used to spark. And now that she was gone, the holes weren't just logistical. They were personal. The worst part. No one asked about her anymore. It was like the world moved on, and no one invited him to the new table. He turned on the television, thinking it would distract him. Instead, he saw her face. Again, Serafina, on a national business talk show, replaying a clip from the summit. Her quote scrolled across the bottom of the screen in white text. "I'm not here because I left. I'm here because I stayed gone." Callan muted the TV. His phone buzzed. A message from a former investor, not harsh, just a clean notice. "We're shifting focus toward independent women-led firms. Thanks for the partnership." He set the phone down, walked to the window. Across the street, the construction of a new co-op wellness center had begun. The signage was small, not flashy, but the logo was hers, Colvin Roots. He watched workers move beams into place. She wasn't trying to erase him. She'd simply outgrown needing to mention him. Serafina was on site that same day. She wore jeans, boots, and a white top tucked under a utility jacket. Hair up, no makeup, just presence. The team gathered around her as Marek unveiled the new layout sketch. "This south wing will host rotating therapist residencies," he explained. "Not just staff. We want movement. Fresh perspectives." She nodded. "Good. We want the space to feel alive, not fixed." Someone asked if she'd be giving a public dedication speech when it launched. "No," she said. "This space isn't about spotlight. It's about restoration." The team fell quiet for a moment. Then Kenley, always bold, added, "Still, people want to hear your voice, Sir." Serafina looked around. "Then let them hear it in the way we build, not in what I say." Later that evening, Marek found her walking the lot alone. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "It's strange. I keep feeling like something's going to fall apart, like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop." He nodded. "That's what happens when you've lived too long in survival." They stopped near the west fence. She looked out. "When does that feeling go away?" He shrugged. "When you stop waiting for shoes to fall and start planting where you stand." She turned to him, and without needing more conversation, he pulled her gently into a hug. No tension, no question, just arms around someone who was finally home in her own life. Back at Callan's penthouse, Lainey stood by the window. She watched him pace. "You still love her?" she asked suddenly. He paused, didn't answer. "That's not a trick question," she said. "I don't know if love is even the right word," he admitted. "What I felt, what I thought I had, it doesn't match who she is now." Lainey sipped her wine. "She's not trying to be your mirror anymore." He exhaled slowly. "I just never thought I'd see her without needing to say a word." Lainey looked at him. "Because you thought she'd always wait for you to be ready." He didn't respond. She walked out, and for once, he didn't try to stop her. At Marek's apartment that night, Serafina took a long shower. She dried off, slipped into his cotton robe, and walked barefoot through the space. Books stacked neatly, dishes done. Everything was soft here, real. She stood at the window, not looking out for anything, just breathing. He walked up behind her. "You still waiting to run?" She shook her head. "I'm not running." She turned. "I'm just not rushing." He reached for her hand. "You don't have to. I'll move at your pace." She looked up, and with that, she kissed him, not as an escape, but as a decision. The next morning, Serafina woke before the sun. She sat on the edge of Marek's bed, wrapped in the robe he always left hanging behind the door. The apartment was still, the kind of still that made you think before you moved. She didn't feel rushed. She didn't feel haunted, just calm. She picked up her phone and opened her notes app. A blank page stared back at her. She began typing. "Peace isn't a moment, it's a decision, and I keep making it, even when no one's watching." She stared at it for a while, then hit save. Behind her, she heard Marek stir. "You always write in the dark?" he asked, voice low with sleep. She turned slightly. "Only when I'm finally starting to understand myself again." He sat up. You want coffee or silence first? Silence, she said. He nodded and leaned back against the headboard. They didn't need small talk. The warmth in the room was already doing the work. Later that morning, Serafina walked into the downtown office of Colvin Roots. Her team paused their meeting when she entered, but she waved them on. Don't stop because I'm here. Keep building. Kenley smiled. We're discussing the opening date. We've got city clearance on inspections, said Jada, her operations coordinator. We can open soft in 6 weeks if we keep our timeline. Serafina looked over the documents. No rush. Get it right. This isn't a launch. It's a new rhythm. Kenley leaned forward. Can I say something? Serafina nodded. You're different now. Still focused. Still you. But more steady. Serafina smiled quietly. That's what happens when you stop proving your worth to people who never deserved it. They all sat with that for a moment. Then got back to work. Across town, Callan walked into a studio. Not his office. Not a press event. A podcast studio. His publicist had arranged a sit-down interview to reset his image. The host was ready. Let's talk about the silence, the host said. You've been out of the news cycle for a while. Callan adjusted his mic. There wasn't anything to say. That's a change for someone who once led headlines. He gave a tight smile. Sometimes you don't realize how loud you've been until the world stops listening. The host raised an eyebrow. People say Serafina never needed to speak. She just moved. And the world moved with her. Callan didn't flinch. Then maybe I was the one doing all the talking. And none of the listening. That made the host pause. You regret how you treated her? Callan looked straight at the host. I regret not realizing I wasn't the main character in her story. I was just the moment she outgrew. Serafina didn't hear the interview. She didn't care to. Her attention was on the site. She stood in the east corridor of the new wellness center, watching light pour through the glass panels Marek had designed. He joined her minutes later. You've been quiet all day, he said. She nodded. I've been thinking about what it means to stay, not in relationships. In self. He folded his arms. And I realized I spent so long adjusting to others that I forgot how still I used to be. Marek leaned against the wall beside her. You're still her, I know. But now I protect her better. He turned to her. You want a soft opening date. I want a soft beginning, she said. For me. For the women we're building this for. He reached for her hand. Then let's begin with no deadline. Just direction. That night, she sat at home alone for the first time in weeks. She didn't turn on music. Didn't scroll her phone. She pulled out a box of old photos, ones from before the marriage, before the partnerships, before the betrayals. She found a photo of herself at 23. Tired eyes, natural hair, slight smile, no labels, no power suits, no expectation. She set it beside a recent photo, taken at the summit, mid-speech. The difference wasn't fashion, it was presence. In one, she was still trying to be seen. In the other, she had stopped asking for permission to exist. She picked up a pen and wrote one final line in her notebook. You don't have to burn bridges. Sometimes you just stop crossing them. She closed the book and felt the chapter turn. The soft launch came without balloons. No press, no speeches, just people. Women from shelters, mothers carrying toddlers, nurses on overnight breaks. Quiet women, tired women, women who didn't want another program. They wanted peace. Serafina stood at the front doors of the new Colvin Roots Center in a simple grey coat and flat shoes. Her hair was pulled back, curls tucked behind her ears. She greeted each person with a nod. No clipboards, no PR photos, just open doors and staff ready to guide. Inside, the space glowed from within. Natural light spilled across wood floors. The air smelled of eucalyptus and lemon. There were places to sit, really sit, not stiff waiting chairs, but softness. One woman stopped in the center of the room and whispered, I didn't know places like this were allowed to be quiet. Serafina smiled gently. That's the point, she said. Marek walked beside her, clipboard in hand, but relaxed. "We're at capacity for the first half of the day," he told her. "And 2 of the counselors have already asked to extend shifts. They said they don't want to leave yet." Serafina didn't respond right away. Instead, she watched a teen girl pour tea for her mother at the refreshment counter, watched a pregnant woman exhale as she sat down in the sunlit corner reading Nook, watched 2 friends hold hands in silence, side by side on a low bench. It was working, not because it was perfect, but because it felt safe. "I want to start scheduling night walks," she said. "Private hours, for the ones who don't feel safe showing up in daylight." Marek nodded. "We'll add it." He didn't ask for approval from a committee, didn't cite budget limits. He trusted her rhythm, and that's what made him different. That evening, Serafina stayed late after the last visitor left. She walked the halls alone, ran her hand along the curved walls she helped design, stopped at the center atrium, the heartbeat of the building. She knelt down and pressed her palm to the floor. Not for show, for grounding. A few months ago, this floor didn't exist. Now it held people. Now it held her. Her phone buzzed on the bench beside her. A message from Callan. Just 2 words. "I see you." She stared at the screen, didn't reply. She walked to the bench, deleted the message, and turned off the phone. Not because it hurt, because it no longer carried weight. She sat in the silence for a while longer, then packed up her things and left, locking the door behind her. Across the city, Callan stood by the window of his high-rise office. He'd watched clips of the center opening, not from news outlets, from the people who had visited, the ones who posted captions like, "Never felt safer in a place I didn't build." "This place understood me without asking questions. She made space. I didn't even know I needed space." He read every word. He didn't screenshot them, didn't repost. And for the first time in a long time, he admitted something to himself. She wasn't his mistake. She was his lesson. Marek found Serafina the next morning sitting on the front steps of the center with a paper cup of coffee in her hands. "You didn't sleep." "I did," she said, "but I woke up early. Needed to watch the sun touch this place." He sat beside her. The city was just beginning to hum. A few early walkers passed. One woman smiled and nodded, recognizing her. "You ever think about what's next?" Marek asked. She turned. "You mean after this?" He nodded. "I think about it all the time," she said, "but I'm not rushing it. For the first time in my life, I'm not chasing. I'm being." He looked at her. "You know what I admire most?" She raised an eyebrow. "You made peace feel louder than anger." She laughed under her breath. "I used to think if I didn't rage, I wouldn't be heard. And now, I realized silence isn't weakness, it's a choice. And sometimes it echoes longer." He reached for her hand. She let him take it. No pressure, just presence. And that was all she needed. The first official month of Colvin Roots passed quietly, but impactfully. No viral campaigns, no press tours, no influencer endorsements, but the waiting list doubled. Therapists asked to extend their contracts. A local university sent volunteers for mentorship programs, and women who had never been able to sit in a room without being evaluated finally sat. Serafina walked the halls like someone remembering her own breath. There was a rhythm now. Every Monday, she brought in new teas for the staff. Every Wednesday, she reviewed feedback cards. Every Friday, she handwrote 3 letters of gratitude to women who'd shared their stories with the team. It wasn't for optics. It was for roots. Because roots weren't loud, they were necessary. And she was finally living in the purpose she'd once feared might pass her by. One Friday afternoon, she returned to her office to find Marek standing by the window. He held a wrapped box in his hand. Neutral brown paper, no ribbon. "What's that?" she asked. He turned, smile soft. "An early gift." She raised an eyebrow. Just open it." She peeled the paper carefully. Inside was a wooden frame. A sketch of her, not on a stage, not giving a speech, not holding a mic, sitting on the floor, barefoot, notebook in hand, Smile small, but present. It was a memory, from the night she came home from the summit and sat on his floor to write. She stared at the drawing. "I didn't know you saw me like that," she said. "I see you like that every day," he replied. Her throat tightened. She looked up. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to," he said. And she didn't. Because sometimes, the people who really see you don't wait for performance. They honor presence. That night, she placed the frame on her bookshelf. Not centered, just resting between books she'd collected over the years. She lit a candle and sat on her couch in silence. Callan's name didn't rise in her thoughts anymore. Not out of anger, not out of longing. He just faded. He wasn't the chapter she reread. He was the one she finished. And now she was writing in the margins of her own story again, with her own pen. And this time, the page was hers. Meanwhile, Callan stared at the last photo he had of her. It was taken during a holiday dinner 2 years ago. She wasn't smiling. Not fully. Her eyes were somewhere else. He hadn't noticed then, because he was looking at himself. Now, he couldn't unsee it. He stood in front of his floor-to-ceiling window, glass in hand, lights off. Behind him, the apartment was quiet. No Laney, no assistants, just space. He could feel the weight of everything he didn't say when it mattered, and the silence that followed. He whispered into the room. I never looked up, but no one answered, because the one who needed to hear that had already walked forward. At Colvin Roots, the team met for their monthly reflection. They gathered in a wide circle in the atrium. Serafina didn't sit in the center. She sat off to the side. One by one, staff and guests shared small moments from the month. I taught a mother how to breathe through panic again. I saw a teenage girl smile for the first time in 4 visits. I watched 2 strangers become friends over tea. Then someone asked her, "What about you, Serafina? What was your moment?" She thought for a second, then said quietly, "I walked into this building one morning and didn't brace for impact. I didn't shrink. I didn't prepare for interruption." She looked around. I just existed, and that, for me, was everything. The room went still, and then one person clapped, then another, not because it was required, but because truth deserves a witness. She smiled, and for once, she let the moment hold her. Serafina stood behind the tinted glass of the new rooftop garden that Marek had designed. The wind was crisp, but the space held warmth. Solar panels filtered light through the pergolas, and scattered benches sat between herb boxes and low flowering shrubs. This wasn't part of the original blueprint, but Marek had added it, quietly. "Some people heal faster when they see something grow," he had said. She watched as 2 women from the shelter program sat near a lavender planter, hands brushing soil, eyes steady. No one told them how to feel. No one interrupted their silence. And that was what made the space work. Healing didn't require volume. It needed permission. She sipped her tea and sat on the edge of the wooden railing. Kenley stepped onto the roof and walked toward her, a tablet tucked under one arm. "Thought I'd find you up here," she said. Serafina nodded. "It's the only place that doesn't need decisions." Kenley sat beside her. "We've got 2 new city proposals requesting partnership, and a private donor who wants to underwrite our second center." Serafina looked out at the skyline. She didn't answer right away. "I don't want to expand too fast," she said. "We're not building branches. We're planting roots." Kenley smiled. "That's exactly what I told them." There was a pause. Then Kenley added, "Callan reached out to us." Serafina's fingers didn't tighten. Her breath didn't catch. "What did he say?" "He wants to fund a grant in your name." Quietly. "Through a trust." No press. Serafina set her cup down on the ledge. "I'm not mad at him anymore," she said. "But I'm not obligated to accept peace offerings he should have made to himself." Kenley nodded slowly. "What do you want me to tell him?" "Tell him no," Serafina said. "And tell him I wish him clarity." That evening she joined Marek at the community night walk. Once a week, the center opened its garden and meditation paths after hours, exclusively for women. who worked nights, cared for others, or simply needed time when the world stopped watching. Marek wore a soft flannel and jeans. He didn't walk beside her to be noticed. He walked beside her because he always had. They passed quiet benches, motion lights warming the paths ahead. Several women smiled softly as they passed. "You ever think about how far this is from who we used to be?" she asked. Marek chuckled. "You were always this. You just let someone else steer the microphone." She looked up. "And you?" He shrugged. "I've always built. I just used to build for people who didn't care where the walls cracked." They stopped near a small bridge that stretched over a narrow koi pond. Serafina rested both hands on the rail. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything. If I never want to be the face of anything again, if I always choose quiet, would you still stay?" He leaned toward her, not crowding, just closer. "I'm not here for the spotlight, Serafina. I'm here for the life you're finally living." She nodded once, and then she didn't speak. She didn't need to, because being understood without having to explain was a kind of love she hadn't known she deserved. Until now. The morning after the walk, Serafina stood inside the still quiet atrium of Colvan Roots with a broom in her hand. She wasn't there for press. No cameras, no announcement, just sweeping. It was part of her rhythm now, arriving before anyone else, making sure the space felt intentional. She liked starting her day with something simple, something real. When Marek arrived, he didn't ask why she was sweeping. He stepped beside her, picked up the dustpan, and worked in sync. "I got a call last night," she said, as they moved through the hall. "From who?" "An old friend, from the early days. She used to do back-end work for Callan's firm before everything scaled." Marek looked at her. "She just wanted to tell me she finally left." She said watching me walk out made her realize she didn't have to stay either. Marek dumped the dustpan and leaned against the wall. "She called looking for a job?" "No," Serafina said with a small smile. "She just wanted me to know she walked out with her head up." He nodded. "You think that's your legacy?" he asked. "Helping women leave?" She shook her head. "My legacy isn't in the leaving," she said. "It's in what they start after they leave." Later that afternoon, the staff hosted an art session in the West Wing. It was simple, blank canvases, paint, soft music and no rules. Serafina didn't join at first. She sat nearby, listening. But one girl, barely 16, stood up from her station, walked over, and quietly asked, "Will you paint with me?" Serafina looked at her. She had a cautious voice, the kind that didn't ask for things often. Serafina rose and followed her to the table. They painted for 20 minutes in silence. Not pictures, not shapes, just movement, color. When the girl finally spoke again, it was one sentence. "I saw you on my aunt's phone." Serafina glanced at her. "At the summit?" "Yeah." She dipped her brush in blue. "She said you looked like someone who remembered how to breathe." Serafina's throat tightened. "And what did you think?" she asked. The girl shrugged. "You look like someone who wouldn't force me to talk before I'm ready." Serafina smiled. "Then I won't." That evening she sat in her office and watched the sky turn. The window caught the last bit of gold before the horizon cooled. She flipped open her notebook. Wrote 3 lines. "I don't want to be praised for what I survived. I want to be respected for what I built after." Quiet wins still count. She closed the book and leaned back. No part of her wanted to look back anymore. Not at Callan. Not at who she was while loving him. She had no interest in comparison. She was too full now, too grounded. And that kind of clarity didn't crave closure. It created distance. Callan sat alone in his penthouse. The lights were dim, dinner untouched. He stared at a draft email on his laptop screen. Subject: "One last thing, Serafina. I know I have no right to ask, but I hope you'll read this. I've watched the center from afar. I see what you've built. I see you. He stopped typing, deleted the message, not because he changed his mind, but because some silences weren't meant to be filled. He leaned back, stared at the ceiling. She wasn't coming back, not because she was angry, but because she was finally free, and that made all the difference. At Marek's apartment that night, Serafina curled up on his couch while he made tea. When he brought her the cup, she looked up. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. If this all ended, if the center closed, if the awards stopped, if no one called me strong anymore, would you still stay?" He didn't answer right away. He sat beside her, then looked her dead in the eyes. "I didn't fall for your strength." She blinked. "I fell for the way you stayed soft anyway. I fell for the woman who didn't weaponize her silence, even when she had every reason to." She didn't reply, but her hand reached for his. Fingers intertwined. No rush, no uncertainty. Just truth. The kind that didn't need to be shouted to be real. Rain tapped softly against the windows of the rooftop greenhouse. Serafina walked slowly between the rows of raised beds, now green with early sprouts, parsley, sage, a few struggling tomatoes. It was quiet. Even the city below seemed to hush. She paused in front of the jasmine planter Marek had built for her birthday. She leaned in, not to pick, just to breathe. Behind her, Kenley entered with a clipboard, stopping when she saw her. "You've been up here every morning this week." Serafina straightened. "There's something about watching things grow that reminds me I didn't just survive." Kenley smiled. "The garden looks good on you." They walked together toward the glass door leading back into the main floor. Before they stepped inside, Kenley hesitated. "I need to tell you something." Serafina turned to her. "Lainey's been doing interviews." Serafina's face didn't move. "She's hinting at past drama, not using your name, but—" "She doesn't have to," Serafina said quietly. Kenley paused. "Do you want me to handle it?" Serafina looked out at the skyline. "No. Let her talk." Kenley blinked. "You sure? She needs it more than I need to silence it." Kenley nodded and walked back inside. Serafina remained on the terrace, because a woman who knew her worth no longer needed to chase down every echo of her name. Across town, Callan watched the interview clip from his office. Lainey sat on a high-backed chair, smiling too much for someone speaking about betrayal. "It's not easy being with someone who disappears into silence when things get hard," she said to the camera. "I think some people wear grace like a shield, but inside, they're just afraid." Callan exhaled and paused the video. He rubbed his temple, leaned back. Not out of guilt, out of clarity. She had no idea how badly she was proving the very thing Serafina never had to say out loud. He picked up his phone, deleted Lainey's number from his contacts. That era was done, and trying to rewrite history wouldn't bring it back. Back at Colvan Roots, Serafina sat with a woman named Annika. Annika was in her 40s, newly divorced, and barely talking when she arrived 2 weeks ago. Today she requested a private session, not with a counselor but with Serafina. They sat across from each other in the meditation room. "I'm tired of being angry," Annika said. Serafina nodded. "You don't have to trade it for joy. Just put it down long enough to rest." Annika looked at her. "What if it comes back?" Serafina folded her hands. "Then it does. But next time, maybe it won't stay as long." Tears gathered in Annika's eyes, but she didn't cry. Instead, she said, "I used to wait for him to see me, but I stopped when I realized I didn't like what I became while waiting." Serafina nodded again, slower this time. "I know that version of waiting," she said. "It leaves dents." Annika leaned forward, rested her elbows on her knees. "You think I'll ever feel light again?" "You already do," Serafina whispered. "You showed up, and for some women, showing up was the first moment they remembered they were still here." That night, Marek picked her up in his truck. They didn't have a destination, just the lake. They drove without music, parked near the shore, and walked until the city lights became dots behind them. She stopped near the edge, her arms folded. "It's strange how full my life feels now." Marek tilted his head. "Strange?" She smiled. Not in a bad way, just unfamiliar. "I used to think I had to earn peace. Now I realize I just had to stop handing it away." He stepped beside her. "You didn't hand it away," he said. "You gave it freely. That's who you were. That's who you still are. She looked at him. But now I give it where it's honored. And that distinction had changed everything. They stood there until the wind picked up. He pulled off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Not because she needed it. Because he noticed. And noticing without being asked was the language she now required. Lainey watched the interview clip again. She hadn't expected it to trend. She hadn't expected the subtle digs at Serafina to catch fire. But now the comments were rolling in. Not the kind she hoped for. Not sympathy. Not praise. Just, she sounds bitter. Didn't he marry someone else already? Some people lose good things and still think they're the prize. Lainey tossed her phone aside and got up from the couch in her short-term rental. She hadn't expected silence from Callan either, but that's what she got. No calls, no texts, not even a warning from his PR team. Just nothing. And in the world she moved in, silence was worse than scandal. She walked into the bathroom, stared at herself. Contouring didn't hide regret, and her lips couldn't sell the lie she now hated hearing. You were the victim, because maybe, just maybe, she hadn't been. She'd been the one in the room when Serafina's name was uninvited. She'd laughed when others whispered. And now, she was alone. Back at Colvin Roots, Serafina ran a hand over the donation ledger. Their first quarter had cleared with a full scholarship for 5 women. Not funded by public charity, not by big investors, but through a small, steady grant from a new partner. Lior Vale. He'd quietly stepped in after hearing about their work from a colleague. No press, no photos, just support. Kenley walked in with a fresh delivery. Serafina didn't even glance up. I'm okay, she said, even if Lainey's noise gets louder. Kenley set down the package. She's not getting louder. She's just echoing into an empty room. Serafina smiled faintly. Kenley added, and Callan? He's not in that room anymore. Serafina didn't answer. She didn't need to. Because peace wasn't dependent on anyone else moving on. It lived in knowing you already had. At his office, Callan watched the final cut of a new campaign video. This one had nothing to do with products. It was about leadership. About the kind of strength that didn't need to be loud. The kind he hadn't always shown. His head of brand walked in. We've been thinking of partnering with a women's recovery initiative. He looked up. Colvin Roots? She nodded. Callan's expression shifted, but only slightly. Let's do it. Serafina received the proposal a week later. A potential partnership, anonymous donation base. Strategic expansion, autonomy, guaranteed. No press tie-ins, just support. She read the fine print and saw the name in the internal memo, Callanton Vale. She placed the papers down and leaned back in her seat. Kenley walked in moments later. Something wrong? No, Serafina said softly. Something full circle. She tapped her pen lightly. I'll accept, but I want a clause added. Kenley tilted her head. Which one? Serafina smiled. No board seats, no names on buildings, and no expectations of a thank you. Kenley grinned. Noted. On Sunday morning she walked the greenhouse alone again. Marek was with his brother helping on the old family farm. She watered slowly, checked the roots. Each plant had a small tag with the name of the woman who planted it. Near the back was one that hadn't sprouted. A name tag read, Annika. She picked up a small note, tucked beside it. Sometimes roots grow before we can see anything. Serafina didn't know who wrote it, but she left it there. Because growth never looked impressive in the beginning, but it always started somewhere. Meanwhile, Lainey sat outside a cold studio. Her next interview was cancelled. The sponsor pulled out. A silent phone, an empty inbox, and no one to spin her words anymore. She looked down at the cheap tea in her hand, and for the first time in years, she tasted what it was like to sit in the silence she had once tried to destroy. At the same hour, Callan walked through the halls of his firm. He paused at the corner hallway where Serafina once stood, waiting after. Every board meeting with notes, follow-ups, and a steady presence. He looked down at the now empty space. He didn't smile, didn't sigh, just nodded once to himself. because the lesson had landed, and this time there was no undoing it. The morning was quiet. No calls, no demands, no meetings. Serafina tied her apron, pressed the soft cotton into place, and stepped into the community kitchen at Colvin Roots. The volunteers were already sorting ingredients for the day's free meal program, baskets of lentils, rice, fresh herbs from the greenhouse. She didn't speak at first. She let the space speak for her. It was warm, lived in, steady, and it was hers. The sound of the front door opening didn't startle her. She expected Kenley or one of the students. But it wasn't. It was Marek. He didn't say anything right away. He just stood there, holding a paper cup of coffee in one hand, his jacket in the other, and a quiet look in his eyes that said more than words ever could. Serafina raised a brow. "Didn't think I'd see you till lunch. I got a feeling," he said, crossing the floor, "that today's the kind of day where you need company. Even if you don't admit it." She smirked gently. "You're wrong." Marek leaned on the counter beside her. "Am the first?" She looked up and finally said, "I needed peace. But it turns out I already had it." He didn't smile. He just stepped closer. "And I'm glad I didn't mess with it," he said. "You didn't need fixing. You just needed to not be betrayed." Her eyes softened. "Do you regret anything?" she asked. Marek didn't hesitate. "Not stepping in sooner. Not telling you that I saw what they tried to bury." Serafina looked at the pot warming on the stove. "Funny," she said. "They buried me for not being loud enough, bright enough, or bendable enough." She glanced back at him, and here we are, still standing. Marek leaned in, gently brushing his hand against hers. More than standing. Later that afternoon, Kenley came into her office holding a small envelope. It was delivered by hand. Serafina didn't rush to open it. She recognized the handwriting. Callan's. Inside wasn't an apology or a plea. It was something else. A photo. A single photo from years ago, taken before the company gala, before the drama, before the downfall. In it, Serafina was smiling slightly, tucking a clipboard under her arm. She didn't know the picture had ever been taken. On the back was a note. "I finally understand why I couldn't replace you. It wasn't your role, it was your steadiness, your presence. You didn't need a spotlight. You were the ground beneath it. No return address, no name signed." But she didn't need one. She tucked the photo in her drawer and closed it quietly. That evening, she hosted a small dinner with the staff and residents. Laughter floated through the greenhouse dining space. Lanterns hung from the rafters. Candles flickered on reclaimed wooden tables. There was no speech, no microphone. Just one moment where Serafina stood, lifted her glass of cider, and said, "To those who tried to silence us, thank you for teaching us that quiet doesn't mean weak." They toasted, and no one needed more words. Back in his apartment, Callan watched the gala livestream alone. Laney wasn't invited this year. His name was still listed, but he didn't go. Instead, he scrolled past news of new partnerships, rising platforms, and awards Colvin Roots had quietly earned. He paused when he saw a caption, "From scandal to shelter, the quiet power behind Colvin Roots." He smiled, not from pride, but from clarity, because for once, the credit went where it belonged. And this time, he wasn't trying to take it back. Serafina stepped into the evening chill alone, not because she was lonely, because it felt right. The air carried no bitterness now, no residue of what had happened, only the scent of rosemary from the garden beds outside Colvin Roots, and the soft laughter of the young girls learning to build a life with nothing but a clean mattress, a binder, and belief. She walked down the gravel path to the back gate. She unlocked it, stepped through, and stared out at the edge of the neighborhood. Across from her stood the building that used to hold her old office, now rented by a new startup, one she'd helped fund quietly through an anonymous grant. That was how she moved now, without announcement, without need. Behind her, Marek approached. He didn't interrupt her silence, just stood beside her, shoulders squared, hands in his coat. What happens now? He asked. Serafina thought for a moment. Now, she said, I do what I was always doing, but this time, no one's muting me with a smile. Marek chuckled. So no memoir, no viral post, no big finale. She smiled gently. No, because this wasn't a performance. He nodded, then paused. Lainey's gone, he said quietly. Serafina turned to him. She left the city. She left the platform, stepped down last week. No statement, no send-off, just a single post. He pulled out his phone and handed it to her. The message read, "To the ones I hurt, I didn't know I was stepping on bones while climbing, but I did, and now I know better. I'm out." Serafina read it once, then handed the phone back. "I don't need her to grovel," she said. "I needed her to stop pretending she didn't know who she stepped over." Marek tucked the phone away. "And Callan?" he asked. "He already gave me what I needed," she said. "A truth too late?" She looked over the city skyline. "No, a truth I never asked for," she said. "And still, I forgave it, not for him, but for me." They stood in silence again, until a voice called from behind, "Ms. Sarah." It was a young woman, one of the new residents, barely 20, face marked with quiet fear. "There's a girl at the gate. Says she's been watching our posts for weeks. She's scared." Serafina's eyes softened. She turned, walked back toward the building, back toward purpose, and Marek followed. Later that night, she sat at her desk, journal open, pen in hand. She didn't write a speech. She wrote a list, names of the women who'd come through their doors. Not the ones who stayed, but the ones who left with something healed. She added a new one, Amira, a girl who hadn't smiled in 2 days, but tonight laughed once when Marek dropped the pot of lentils. That counted. That mattered. And as Serafina closed the book, she looked at the last note she'd left on her mirror. "You don't need to be loud to be unforgettable." She whispered it once to herself, then turned off the light. Across town, at a bar downtown, a couple of young executives were laughing over cocktails. One of them glanced at a TV muted above the counter. A scrolling headline read, "Quiet Women, Loud Impact. Inside the Rise of Colvin Root's Global Reach." One executive nudged the other. "Wasn't that the place that started after some drama with, what was the guy's name?" The other shrugged. "Something Roke? I don't remember. But I remember her." He nodded toward the screen. She didn't need to scream to be heard. She changed everything by standing still. The bartender poured another drink. "Some people leave the noise behind," he said. "Others are the ones you build around." And back at Colvin Roots, as the lights dimmed and the city hushed, a new girl slept on clean sheets. A volunteer finished mopping the hallway. And Serafina Vell? She didn't need to be remembered by the ones who tried to erase her. She was remembered by those she lifted. If you've ever been silenced, overlooked, or dismissed, remember this. You don't need applause to make your impact real. You don't need permission to heal, to lead, or to walk away with grace. Quiet strength is still strength. And some of the most powerful legacies are built in the spaces where no one clapped. Serafina didn't break them. She outlasted them, and she did it without raising her voice. If you believe that quiet justice always finds a way, like, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments, whose voice are you reclaiming today?